Hi guys, Tiffany here of Tiffany Gordon Cosplay with another cosplay tutorial, and this time it is over how I made the wings for my Sarah costume from the game Genshin Impact. And as always, if you'd like to follow along with this tutorial and make your own version, I have the wings blueprint available on my website www.tiffanygordoncosplay.com or see the link below. To first start off, we're going to be talking about how I made the bone structure for the wings. And for these, we're going to be using 1/2 inch CPVC pipes. And the bone structure is going to be what our wing pieces are going to be attached onto, as well as this is going to make it so your wings stay in the actual shape you want them and don't become floppy. And we're going to be placing these around the spine of the wings, which will be on the top part. Starting off with the smaller section of the wings, I started off on where the longest part I wanted to be, going in one direction, and then adding a Sharpie mark to indicate where I'm going to bend it, rotating the pipe into the next direction, and continuing down the length of the wings until I was happy. I repeated this for the second half of the wings as well as for the longer wings, and then went to cut them at my workbench using a jeweler's saw. Next, we're going to be bending the CPVC pipe into the shape that we want. And for this, you're going to want some heat-resistant gloves, a heat-resistant working surface, as well as a heat gun. And of course, when using any type of heat onto this type of material, you do want to be in an extremely well-ventilated area, wearing a respirator and having all of your windows open to help ventilate the smell. And then for bending them, you're going to want to use your heat gun and apply heat, rotating evenly around the piping where you had your Sharpie marker to indicate. This is going to be where it is going to slowly heat up and start to get a little bit soft and loose in that section. You do not want to overheat it or it will burn. And when it becomes loose, you will then want to put it on top of your template for the wings and then hold it into the shape that you want it to cool off and harden into that angle. You will want to repeat this for all of the pieces, but make sure that they are all put in the same direction. And then repeat this for all of the other parts. And here are what the short and the long wings looked like for once I had them bent to the shape that I wanted. Now to talk about the harness. For this, I did the same method that I do for all of my wings, and I 3D modeled in Rhino 6 the backplate harness piece, as well as making 4 attachments for the wings. These attachments are what the CPVC pipe are going to be inserted into, as well as they will have male parts that will then insert into the harness backplate. This will make it so your wings can disassemble and be easily put on and off while you are wearing the cosplay. And the STL files for these harness and wing parts are going to be available on my website, www.tiffanygordoncosplay.com, or see the link below. And after all of the parts were modeled, I then printed them on my Prusa i3 Mark 2.5 3D printer in PLA filament. Next, I cut carbon fiber tubing, and these are going to be the parts that are inserted into the wing attachment parts, as they are the male parts, so they can insert into the female section on the back harness. And for these, you will want to use 120 grit sandpaper to rough up the surface. This way, when we glue it together with epoxy, the epoxy has something to grip onto and will not just come straight off. As well as also doing this to the CPVC pipe bone structure. And for gluing, again, I'm using 2-part epoxy, applying it to the carbon fiber tubing and then inserting it into the wing attachment parts and wiping up any extra that comes out with a paper towel. One tip for this though is because these are going to be inserted into another piece, and 3D printed parts don't always print perfectly, you will want to insert this into the female part of the harness and let it dry in there, so that way it will be able to go perfectly in and out of this part for disassembling. But remember, you are using epoxy, so you will want to put some masking tape or something in between the two pieces so that way they do not glue together. After letting 24 hours for these pieces to fully dry, I then proceeded to repeat this with the bone structure for the CPVC pipes into the wing attachment parts. Again, using epoxy, wiping off extra pieces, and for this I did end up using some sandbags as weight to put into the center, so that way all the pieces would go at the exact same angle that I wanted them to dry in. I would highly recommend laying the wing templates down near this, so that way you know which way to glue the CPVC pipe into place. As these wings look a little upside down, it can be a bit more confusing. So this is just a little helpful tip. Now for the strapping part of this harness. And for this, I used nylon strapping, cut them into really long strips, and then sewed them to the top part using my sewing machine and just some straight stitch back and forth. And then just insert the bottom part of the strap into the sides of the harness, and then you can attach your belt buckles, and then your harness is done. Now to go over the feather part of the wings, and for this we're going to be using 2mm EVA foam. And for these part of the wings, I ended up making separate parts of each wing part from my blueprints. This way I could have a more three-dimensional effect to the wings. Having one piece be the size of the entire wing, and then having one on either side of one wing, so that way you could have individual feathers flurry out. So in total, for the 2 small wings, you should cut out each of your pieces 4 times if you want it to be both visible on the front and the back, as well as for the bottom large wings. And I traced each of these pieces with a Sharpie and then cut out them with an X-Acto knife. Next, I used a heat gun to heat treat both sides of the EVA foam. This will also help your foam to lay flat and make it much easier to work with. And to give the feathers a more natural look and less straight cut out, I went to my workbench and sanded all of the edges using a sanding drum. Now for attaching them, and for this we're going to be using contact cement glue. Applying contact cement glue to what you want both parts to attach together, letting each section dry fully before bonding them together. And I started off by doing the small wings, applying it to the bone structure, and then applying it to the base wing full piece. And for this, I'm assembling the wings on the bone structure because I want to hide the frame, where if you were going to make each wing and then attach it afterwards, you would have the bone structure exposed and it wouldn't look as natural in one piece. I then repeated this same process of tracing where each of the individual pieces I wanted them to sit on the base wing, and then contact cement glue, wait for it to dry, and then attach it on both sides of the wing until I had all of the pieces assembled. And here is what the small wings looked like once done. I will also note that I did sand the top spine part so that way they would be flushed together. And then repeated all of this as well for the larger bottom parts of the wings. And here's what the large wing looked like once done, as well as all of the wings when they were all finished. Now for priming our pieces, and for this I'm going to be doing 3 heavy coats of Plasti-Dip onto the front and the back side of each of the wings. You will also want to lift each of the individual feathers and spray underneath so that way they do not fuse together. And here's what it looked like afterwards. This will also make it so that way your feathers will start peeling upward and give a more three-dimensional look rather than a flat stuck-on look. Now for painting, and for this I did everything with Iwata Eclipse airbrush gun as well as using Createx Colors Wicked Color airbrush paint. Starting off with a mix of their purple and white paint, making a very light lavender color. And then slowly doing a darker gradient towards the tip, going to a slightly more darker purpley blue color, and then adding a black at the end. This is really gonna make the wings pop and not look flat. I will note that painting this was a little bit weird just because typically the darker color would be more towards the base, but you can do this process backwards with painting and still get the same exact results for whatever wings you are making. The very last step for these wings was to seal them, and for this I used Createx Colors UVLS Satin Clear, applying it by paintbrush by hand, a light coat onto the front and the back half of the surface, and this is gonna really give it a nice consistent shine throughout the entire piece. And then, dun 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 dun, your wings are finished! Yay! Thank you guys for watching this cosplay tutorial on how I made Sarah's wings from Genshin Impact. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if so, let me know in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you for our next one. Much love!